Lieutenant Maya Reyes, 26, was a woman forged by determination and dreams that refused to die. Her dark hair was always pulled back in a regulation-perfect bun. Her uniform crisp, despite the long hours she put in at Edwards Air Force Base. She stood 5'4", but carried herself with such conviction that she seemed taller. Her eyes, deep brown and intensely focused, betrayed a mind constantly calculating, analyzing, perfecting. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Maya had always been drawn to the sky. As a child in rural New Mexico, she would lie on her back in the desert, watching aircraft slice through the brilliant blue with contrails that looked like chalk marks on the perfect canvas above. Her father, a mechanic at a small regional airport, had fed that passion, bringing home aviation magazines and technical manuals that she devoured by flashlight long after she was supposed to be asleep. Getting into the Air Force Academy had been her first victory, graduating near the top of her class, the second. But the path to becoming a pilot had been lined with obstacles that seemed designed specifically to make her fail. The training was grueling enough for anyone, but for Maya, it came with an additional burden, the constant, subtle implication that she didn't belong. Women don't have the spatial awareness, some would mutter when they thought she couldn't hear. Not built for the G-forces, others would say directly to her face, as if they were doing her a favor by discouraging her dreams. But Maya had learned early that the best response to doubt was not argument, but achievement. So she studied harder, trained longer, and maintained a quiet dignity that earned her respect from those who mattered. After completing her initial flight training with high marks, Maya had been selected for an elite program, the Advanced Tactical Flight Simulation Initiative at Edwards. Only the top pilots were chosen, those with potential to fly the newest aircraft being developed. It should have been her greatest accomplishment yet. Instead, it had become her most difficult battle. The program was run by Colonel Victor Hammond, a legendary Air Force pilot with over 3,000 flight hours in combat zones, and a reputation for producing the best of the best. He was in his late 50s, his once black hair now salt and pepper, his face weathered by years of high-altitude flying. His record was impeccable, his methods unorthodox, and his opinion of female pilots had been made abundantly clear from day one. Flying isn't about equality, he'd told the group during orientation, his eyes lingering on Maya just a moment too long. It's about capability. Not everyone has what it takes, and I'm not in the business of pretending otherwise to spare feelings. The simulation room at Edwards was state-of-the-art, a cavernous space, dominated by 6 full-motion flight simulators that could replicate the experience of flying everything, from an F-16 to the newest prototype aircraft still in development. The walls were lined with monitors displaying flight data, and a central command station allowed instructors to control simulation parameters and evaluate performance. Maya's first month in the program had been a series of small humiliations. When other pilots made mistakes, they received constructive feedback. When Maya made the same errors, they became evidence of her inherent unsuitability. Today's simulation was supposed to be a straightforward combat scenario, evade enemy aircraft while protecting the ground target. Maya had studied the parameters extensively, had even come in after hours to practice similar scenarios, but something was off. The simulator seemed to respond differently than in her practice sessions. The aircraft felt sluggish, unresponsive in ways that didn't make sense, given the simulation parameters. By her third attempt, Maya suspected what was happening, but saying so would sound like making excuses. So she kept her mouth shut and prepared for another attempt, even as Colonel Hammond's dismissive laughter still hung in the air. "I think we've seen enough, Lieutenant," Colonel Hammond said, his voice carrying that particular tone of disappointment he seemed to reserve just for her. "Let's give someone else a chance to show how it's done." Maya climbed out of the simulator, her legs slightly shaky, not from fear, but from the intense concentration and the adrenaline crash that followed failure. She moved to the back of the room as Captain James Chun took her place. Chun was good, everyone acknowledged that, and Maya watched carefully as he began the same scenario. As Chun flew, Maya noticed something. The aircraft responded immediately to his inputs. There was none of the lag she had experienced, none of the peculiar resistance when banking or climbing. Her suspicions crystallized into certainty: the simulation. Parameters had been altered for her runs. She was being set up to fail. The realization should have made her angry, but instead, a cold determination settled over her. If this was the game, she would learn to play it better. She would not just overcome the standard challenges. She would overcome the additional obstacles placed deliberately in her path. Chun completed the mission successfully, as Maya had expected. Colonel Hammond's praise was effusive, pointed. "See that, everyone? That's how a natural pilot handles adversity. Some people have it, some don't." Several of the other pilots glanced uncomfortably at Maya, a few with sympathy, others with barely concealed satisfaction at her public failure. One, however, was watching her with a different expression altogether. Major Eliza Washington, one of the few female instructors in the program, had been observing from the corner of the room. Her face revealed nothing, but her eyes, sharp, analytical, moved from the simulation controls to Maya and back again. The day's training session ended with Maya at the bottom of the performance rankings, a position that was becoming distressingly familiar. As the room cleared out, she lingered, checking her notes, unwilling to join the others in the mess hall where she would have to endure their awkward sympathy or thinly veiled mockery. "Lieutenant Reyes," Major Washington's voice startled her. The major was standing by the door, her posture perfect as always, her dark skin contrasting with the crisp blue of her uniform. At 40, Washington had been one of the first women to fly combat missions in certain theaters, breaking barriers that most didn't even realize had existed. A word, please. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Maya followed Washington down the corridor to a small office. Unlike most officers' spaces, Washington's office was Spartan, with few personal touches save for a single framed photo of an older woman, her mother. Maya had heard, and a model of an F-35 that sat on the corner of her desk. "Sit down, Washington," sighed, closing the door. She didn't sit behind her desk, but took the chair next to Maya's, turning to face her directly. "What did you notice about the simulator today?" The question was precise, testing. Maya hesitated only briefly. The response time was delayed by approximately 1.5 seconds on elevator controls. Aileron response was diminished by what felt like 30%. The thrust seemed normal, but the aircraft pulled right under acceleration, suggesting an intentional asymmetry in the simulation parameters. A flicker of something approval, perhaps, crossed Washington's face. "And your conclusion?" "The simulation was altered to increase difficulty," Maya said carefully, not wanting to make accusations without proof. "Altered specifically for you," Washington corrected, her voice matter of fact. "I've been watching this happen for weeks. Different parameters for different pilots. Some get the standard simulation. Others, usually the ones Hammond has decided don't belong, get what I call the impossible scenario." Maya felt a mixture of vindication and disappointment. She had suspected as much, but having it confirmed by a superior officer made it real in a way that her suspicions hadn't been. "Is that allowed?" Washington's laugh was short, without humor. "Allowed? Technically, yes. Instructors have discretion to adjust simulation parameters to challenge pilots according to their abilities. The idea is to push everyone to their limits. The problem is when that discretion becomes a tool for something else entirely." Maya understood what wasn't being said. Hammond wasn't pushing her to be better. He was pushing her out. What do? I do? That depends. Washington leaned forward slightly. Are you looking for fairness or are you looking to prove something? Because those are two very different paths, Lieutenant. Maya didn't hesitate this time. I want to be the best pilot in the program. Not the best female pilot, the best pilot, period. If the only way to prove that is to beat an impossible scenario, then that's what I'll do. Washington studied her for a long moment, then nodded once, decisively. Meet me here at 040 tomorrow. The simulators are technically available for independent study, but no one uses them at that hour. Yes, ma'am. Maya stood, understanding she was being dismissed. And Lieutenant, Washington added as Maya reached for the door handle, this conversation never happened. As far as anyone knows, you're just putting in extra practice time, understood? Understood, ma'am. Maya left the office with a new sense of purpose. The game was rigged, she had suspected as much, but now she knew exactly how it was rigged. And knowledge, as her father had always told her, was the first step to victory. That night, instead of going to her quarters after dinner, Maya went to the base library. It was nearly empty at this hour, just a few officers studying technical manuals or writing reports. She found a terminal in the corner, away from curious eyes, and began researching everything she could find about the specific simulator model used in the program. The technical specifications were available only to maintenance personnel, but Maya had made friends with Senior Airman Rodriguez, who kept the simulators running. She sent him a message, careful to keep it casual, asking about a paper she was supposedly writing on simulation technology. Within 20 minutes, she had access to the maintenance manuals. Maya spent hours poring over the technical details, focusing specifically on how the controls translated input into simulated aircraft response. She found what she was looking for on page 247 of the manual, a detailed explanation of the delay, factors that could be programmed into each control surface. The system was designed to simulate different aircraft types, some more responsive than others, but it could also be used to replicate mechanical failures or adverse conditions. Armed with this knowledge, Maya returned to her quarters just before midnight. Her roommate, Lieutenant Sarah Patel, was already asleep, the steady rhythm of her breathing filling their shared space. Maya changed quietly and lay down, but sleep didn't come easily. Her mind was racing, calculating strategies for compensating for the artificial delays, planning approaches that would work even with diminished control response. When her alarm went off at 0330, Maya was already awake. She dressed quickly in the darkness and made her way through the quiet base to the simulation building. The night air was cool against her skin, the stars brilliant in the desert sky above Edwards. For a moment, she paused, looking up at the vast expanse above. That was where she belonged, not grounded by someone else's prejudice, but free in the limitless blue. Major Washington was already waiting when Maya arrived, a thermos of coffee in one hand and a tablet in the other. Right on time, Lieutenant. Let's get started. The simulation room felt different in the pre-dawn hours, larger, somehow, and full of possibility rather than judgment. Washington went to the control station and brought up the simulation parameters from Maya's previous attempts. As I suspected, she said, pointing to several highlighted values on the screen. Response delay set to maximum, all primary control surfaces, asymmetrical thrust profile. Artificial turbulence factor increased by 200%. Basically, you weren't flying the same simulation as the others. Maya studied the values, committing them to memory. Can we reset it to standard parameters so I can see the difference? We could, Washington said, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. But that's not why we're here at this ungodly hour, is it? You don't want to fly the standard simulation. You want to master the impossible one. Maya felt a surge of determination. Yes, ma'am. Good, because that's exactly what I had in mind. Washington tapped several commands into the system. I'm setting it up exactly as it was yesterday, all the same handicaps. But this time, you'll know what you're dealing with. Let's see what you can do with that knowledge. For the next 3 hours, Maya flew simulation after simulation, each time with the deck stacked against her. The first attempts were still failures, but with each run, she began to adapt. She learned to anticipate the delayed response, to input commands earlier than instinct dictated. She developed a feel for the asymmetrical thrust, automatically compensating without conscious thought. By the time the facility would begin filling with other personnel, Maya had completed the impossible scenario successfully twice. Not perfectly her. Score was still well below what the others achieved on the standard simulation, but she had accomplished what Hammond had clearly designed to be unachievable. That's enough for today, Washington said as Maya climbed out of the simulator after her 12th attempt. You've made impressive progress, but we need to be smart about this. If you suddenly perform too well in today's official session, Hammond will just change the parameters again. Maya nodded, understanding the strategy. How do we proceed then? Gradually, Washington said. Today, you'll do slightly better enough to move up one position in the rankings, but not enough to draw suspicion. Meanwhile, we'll continue these early sessions. I want you not just completing the scenario, but mastering it. And then? Maya prompted when Washington paused. A slow smile spread across the Major's face. And then we'll wait for the right moment to show what you can really do. Maya left the simulation building just as the sun was rising over the desert horizon, casting long shadows across the tarmac. She was exhausted but energized, her mind already planning adjustments for the next practice session. For the first time since arriving at Edwards, she felt a genuine hope that she might not just survive this program, but excel in it. The day's official training session unfolded as Washington had advised. Maya performed noticeably better than previous days, enough to move up in the rankings, but not enough to raise eyebrows. Colonel Hammond seemed mildly surprised, but made no comment beyond a grudging acknowledgement that everyone gets lucky occasionally. This became her new routine. Pre-dawn sessions with Major Washington, gradual improvement in the official training, careful management of perceptions. It was exhausting, requiring her to function on minimal sleep and maximum concentration. But Maya found reserves of determination she hadn't known she possessed. 2 weeks into this regimen, a new development changed the dynamic. An announcement was made that a delegation from Pentagon would be visiting Edwards to observe the Advanced Tactical Flight Simulation Initiative. The delegation would include several generals and the Secretary of the Air Force, herself a woman who had been a pioneer in military aviation before moving into politics. This changes things, Washington told Maya during their early morning session. Hammond will want to showcase his best pilots, which means Chen and Ramirez will get the spotlight. But he'll also need to demonstrate the program's inclusivity, which means he'll need to include me, Maya finished the thought. But he'll want to make sure I don't embarrass the program. Exactly. My guess is he'll ease back on your simulation parameters, not to standard, but enough that you won't fail spectacularly in front of the Secretary. Washington's expression was calculating. This is an opportunity, Lieutenant. The question is, how do we make the most of it? Maya thought for a moment, then smiled slowly. By preparing for something even harder than what he's been throwing at me. The next week was the most intense yet. Washington reprogrammed the simulation to be even more difficult, then Hammond's version controlled delays longer, thrust asymmetry more pronounced, artificial turbulence more severe. If Maya could master this ultra-handicapped version, Hammond's impossible scenario would feel almost normal by comparison. The night before the Pentagon delegation was due to arrive, Maya stayed in the simulator until nearly midnight, running the ultra-difficult scenario over and over until she could complete it with a score that would have been respectable even on the standard simulation. When she finally emerged, exhausted but satisfied, she found Major Washington waiting for her. "You're ready," Washington said simply. "Get some rest, Lieutenant. Tomorrow is going to be interesting." The observation day dawned clear and cool. The kind of perfect desert morning that made Edwards an ideal location for flight testing. The base was buzzing with activity as the Pentagon delegation arrived, their motorcade creating a stir as it passed through the main gate. Maya and the other pilots gathered in the briefing room, everyone in dress uniform, the atmosphere tense with anticipation. Colonel Hammond stood at the front, his own uniform adorned with rows of ribbons and medals, looking every inch the distinguished Air Force officer as he prepared to greet the visitors. "Listen up," he addressed the assembled pilots. "Today is about showcasing this program and the exceptional talent we're developing here. Each of you will have an opportunity to demonstrate your skills in the simulator. The scenarios have been standardized for today's demonstration." He glanced briefly at Maya. "So everyone will be flying under identical conditions." Maya kept her expression neutral, even as she processed this information. Standardized conditions meant she would finally get to fly the same simulation as everyone else. A development that Hammond clearly expected would still show her at a disadvantage compared to pilots who had been training on those parameters all along. The delegation arrived shortly after, a procession of stars and eagles on shoulders, led by the secretary herself, a tall, distinguished woman in her 60s with silver hair and the confident bearing of someone accustomed to command. Hammond made introductions, the pilots standing at attention as their names were called. "And this is Lieutenant Maya Reyes," Hammond said when he reached her, his tone perfectly professional. "One of our newer additions to the program." The secretary paused, studying Maya with interest. "Lieutenant Reyes, I've heard your name before. Weren't you the one who developed that innovative approach to low-altitude terrain following during your academy days?" Maya felt a surge of surprise. That the secretary would know about her undergraduate research project. "Yes, ma'am. That was my thesis." "Impressive work," the secretary said with a nod before moving on. The demonstration began with Captain Chun, who performed flawlessly. As expected, 2 other pilots followed, each showing the high level of skill that had earned them places in the program. Then it was Maya's turn. As she walked to the simulator, she could feel Hammond's eyes on her, could almost sense his certainty that she would perform adequately but not exceptionally, enough to avoid embarrassment but not enough to challenge his established star pilots. Maya settled into the simulator, adjusting the seat and controls with practiced precision. Through the canopy, she could see the delegation watching, their expressions attentive but neutral. Major Washington stood slightly apart, her posture perfect, her face revealing nothing of their shared secret. Simulation commencing in 3, 2, 1. The technician's voice came through her headset, and then the world inside the simulator transformed into a hyper-realistic combat scenario. The moment Maya took control, she knew something was different. The aircraft responded immediately to her inputs, no delay, no asymmetry, no artificial handicaps. For the first time since joining the program, she was flying a completely fair simulation. It felt almost too easy after weeks of battling the handicapped version. Her movements were precise, anticipating challenges that came nowhere near the difficulty of what she had been practicing. She completed the primary objectives in record time, then seamlessly transitioned to the bonus objectives that most pilots didn't even attempt. By the time the simulation ended, a hushed silence had fallen over the observation area. Maya removed her helmet and climbed out, unsure of what to expect. The data screen above the control station told the story. She had achieved the highest score ever recorded on this particular scenario, not just among the current class, but in the program's history. Colonel Hammond stood frozen, his expression a complex mixture of disbelief and something that might have been anger, quickly masked. The other pilots were staring, some with open admiration, others with barely concealed shock. It was the secretary, who broke the silence, stepping forward with a smile. "Well, Colonel Hammond, it seems you've been holding out on us. You didn't mention you had a record breaker in your program." Hammond cleared his throat. "Lieutenant Reyes has shown unexpected improvement recently," he managed. "Improvement?" The secretary raised an eyebrow. "That was beyond impressive, Lieutenant. Have you always performed at this level?" Maya met the secretary's gaze steadily. "I believe in continuous improvement, ma'am, and in overcoming whatever challenges are placed before me." Something in her tone, or perhaps in the pointed glance she directed at Hammond, seemed to register with the secretary, whose eyes narrowed slightly in understanding. An admirable philosophy, one that the Air Force would do well to embrace at all levels. The demonstration continued with the remaining pilots, but the energy in the room had shifted. Maya's performance had disrupted the narrative Hammond had clearly planned to present. Instead of a program progressing as expected under his guidance, the delegation had witnessed something more compelling: exceptional talent emerging despite obstacles. As the day concluded and the delegation prepared to depart, the secretary pulled Maya aside. "Walk with me a moment, Lieutenant." They moved away from the group, out of earshot of the others. "I recognize that look in your eyes," the secretary said quietly. "I've worn it myself. The look that says you've had to work twice as hard to get half the credit." Maya remained silent, understanding that this conversation required careful navigation. "Major Washington briefed me privately before the demonstration," the secretary continued. "She showed me the actual simulation parameters you've been training with compared to the others. I have to say, I'm not just impressed by your performance today. I'm impressed by your resilience these past weeks." Maya felt a momentary panic. Washington had taken an enormous risk. "Ma'am, the secretary held up a hand. "No need to say anything, Lieutenant. Some traditions in our service are worth preserving. Others—" She glanced back at Hammond, who was engaged in conversation with one of the generals. "Others need to evolve. You've made that point more eloquently today than any speech I could give." Before rejoining the delegation, the secretary added one final comment. "I'll be watching your career with great interest. Lieutenant Reyes, we need pilots like you, not despite who you are, but because of it." The delegation departed, leaving a changed atmosphere in their wake. Hammond disappeared into his office without addressing the pilots further. The others surrounded Maya, questions pouring out about how she had achieved such a remarkable score. "Just practice," she said with a small smile. "Lots and lots of practice." Later, Maya found Major Washington in her office, reviewing the day's data. "Bold move, briefing the secretary," Maya said as she closed the door behind her. Washington looked up, a rare smile on her face. "Sometimes you need to know when to play by the rules and when to rewrite them. Besides, I didn't show her anything that wasn't in the official logs. I just made sure she knew how to interpret the data." "What happens now?" Maya asked. "Now?" Washington leaned back in her chair. "Now Colonel Hammond faces a choice. He can continue trying to push you out and risk drawing further attention from very high places, or he can adjust his perspective and perhaps learn something." Maya nodded, understanding the delicate balance of power that had shifted today. "And me? What do I do now that I've proven myself?" "You keep flying, Lieutenant," Washington said simply. "You keep getting better. And you remember that someday you'll be in a position to hold the door open for someone else." As Maya left the office, the setting sun cast long shadows across the flight line, where the real aircraft sat waiting her ultimate goal beyond the simulators. She had won a significant battle today, but the larger war for acceptance, for true equality in the cockpit, was ongoing. Yet for the first time, it felt like a war that could actually be won. Not through confrontation or complaint, but through undeniable excellence that spoke louder than any words. Because in the end, the sky doesn't care about gender, race, or background. It only respects one thing: the skill to master it. He's looking for a new strategy, Major Washington warned during their early morning session, which they had decided to continue despite Maya's public triumph. Men like Hammond don't change their minds easily. They just change their tactics. Maya nodded, understanding. One victory, however significant, wasn't enough to overcome years of ingrained prejudice. What do you think his next move will be? Washington considered the question while adjusting the simulator parameters. My guess? He'll move the battleground. The simulation was supposed to be where you failed, but you've turned it into your strength. So he'll find another arena. This prediction proved accurate sooner than either of them expected. That very afternoon, Hammond announced a change to the training schedule. Beginning next week, we'll be transitioning from simulation to actual flight testing, he informed the group, his eyes briefly meeting Maya's before moving on. The prototype XF-29 has been cleared for initial evaluation flights. Based on performance rankings, Captain Chun will be first in the rotation, followed by Lieutenant Ramirez, Captain Hodges, and Lieutenant Santos. Maya's name was conspicuously absent from the list, despite her new ranking that should have placed her third. No one commented on the omission, but several pilots glanced her way, some with sympathy, others with barely concealed satisfaction. After the briefing, Maya approached Hammond directly. Sir, I noticed I wasn't included in the flight rotation for the XF-29. Hammond regarded her with cool professionalism. That's correct, Lieutenant. The initial test flights require pilots with extensive previous experience on similar airframes. Your background is primarily in transport and training aircraft. This was technically true but deliberately misleading. While Maya had logged most of her flight hours in larger aircraft, her training had included significant time in fighters. More importantly, the whole purpose of the simulation program was to prepare pilots for new aircraft, regardless of their previous experience. With respect, sir, the simulation data indicates I'm fully prepared for the XF-29, Maya pressed, keeping her tone even despite the anger building inside her. Hammond's expression hardened slightly. Simulators and actual aircraft are very different beasts, Lieutenant. One responds to algorithms. The other responds to physics. When lives and multi-million-dollar equipment are at stake, I make decisions based on more than just simulation scores. The message was clear. Her achievement in the simulator would be dismissed as irrelevant, a fluke, not indicative of real flying ability. Hammond was moving the goalposts, ensuring that no matter how well she performed in one area, there would always be another reason to hold her back. Maya left the conversation seething, but determined not to show it. Washington had been right. Hammond hadn't changed his mind, just his approach. The battleground had shifted from the virtual to the real, but the war remained the same. That evening, she sought out Major Washington, finding her in the officers' gym, finishing a punishing workout regimen that explained her perpetually perfect physical condition. Washington listened to Maya's account of the conversation, her expression unchanging as she toweled off. Not unexpected, Washington said finally, but potentially a miscalculation on his part. How so? Maya asked, confused. It seemed Hammond had effectively blocked her path forward. Washington sat on a bench, gesturing for Maya to join her. Hammond thinks he's being clever by acknowledging your simulator success, while finding a new reason to sideline you. But he's forgotten something important about the Air Force. What's that? Everything is documented. Washington smiled thinly. Flight hours, qualifications, training records, all of it lives in the system. And that system was designed to be objective, even if the people running it sometimes aren't. Maya began to understand. So there's a way to challenge his decision. Not directly. Chain of command still matters, and Hammond has authority over his program. But there are other avenues. Washington lowered her voice, though they were alone in the gym. "The secretary was impressed with you, and she's not the only one who took notice. I've received inquiries from General Martinez at Air Combat Command." Maya's eyes widened. General Elena Martinez was a legend, one of the first female fighter pilots to reach the highest echelons of command, known for her strategic brilliance and uncompromising standards. "The general is looking for pilots to evaluate a different prototype at Nellis," Washington continued. "The XQ-12, a next-generation unmanned combat aerial vehicle with optional pilot control. It's designed to push the boundaries of what's possible in terms of G-forces and maneuverability, since it can operate both with and without a human pilot." "And she asked for me specifically?" Maya could hardly believe it. "She asked for recommendations of exceptional pilots who might think differently than the traditional fighter jock. Your name was at the top of my list." Washington stood, indicating the conversation was concluding. "I've forwarded your complete records, including the unaltered simulation data showing how you performed under handicap conditions. The decision is hers, but I wouldn't be surprised if you receive orders for temporary duty at Nellis very soon." Maya felt a surge of excitement, quickly followed by uncertainty. Leaving Edwards would feel like letting Hammond win. Washington's expression softened slightly, the closest she ever came to displaying emotion. "Lieutenant, this isn't about winning or losing a personal battle with one stubborn colonel. It's about finding the path that allows you to serve to your full potential. Sometimes that path takes unexpected turns." 3 days later, the orders came through. Lieutenant Maya Reyes was to report to Nellis Air Force Base for a 6-week assignment to the Autonomous Combat Systems Evaluation Team, effective immediately. The orders bore General Martinez's electronic signature and specified that Maya was being detailed specifically for her exceptional adaptive control capabilities and innovative approach to flight dynamics. Word spread quickly through the Edwards pilot community. Most offered congratulations, recognizing the prestigious nature of the assignment. A few, including Chen, seemed genuinely happy for her. "The XQ-12 is supposed to be revolutionary," he told her as she cleared out her locker. "If anyone can push it to its limits, it's you." Colonel Hammond's reaction was more measured. He called Maya to his office before her departure, his demeanor formal, almost stiff. "I understand congratulations are in order, Lieutenant." "Thank you, sir," Maya replied, equally formal. Hammond studied her for a moment, then sighed. "I want to be clear about something, Reyes. My decisions regarding the XF-29 test flights weren't personal. Aircraft testing is inherently dangerous. Pilots die when mistakes are made." Maya maintained her composure, though she was surprised by what almost sounded like an attempted justification. "I understand risk assessment, sir. I also believe in my abilities. Yes, you've made that abundantly clear." Hammond's expression was unreadable. "The XQ-12 program is unconventional. General Martinez has different ideas about combat aviation than many of us who came up through traditional fighter roles. Her focus on unmanned systems is seen as controversial in some circles." Maya recognized the subtle message. Hammond was suggesting she was being sidelined to an experimental program that real fighter pilots would avoid. Even in what should be a moment of advancement, he was attempting to diminish her achievement. "I see it as the future of air combat." "Sir," Maya responded evenly. "A chance to define what's possible rather than being limited by what's been done before." Something flickered in Hammond's eyes, annoyance, perhaps, or possibly a reluctant acknowledgement. "Well, you've certainly proven you can handle a simulator. Let's see how you do with actual advanced technology. Good luck, Lieutenant." It wasn't exactly a ringing endorsement, but Maya hadn't expected one. She left Edwards the next morning, driving her small sedan across the desert to Nellis, the vast Nevada sky stretching endlessly above her. The journey gave her time to think, to process the whirlwind of events that had led to this unexpected detour in her career path. By the time she arrived at Nellis, passing through the security checkpoints and finding her way to the specialized hangar where the XQ-12 program was housed, Maya had resolved to approach this new challenge with the same determination that had gotten her through Edwards. This wasn't a consolation prize or a sidetrack. This was an opportunity to prove herself in an even more cutting-edge environment. The XQ-12 facility was unlike anything Maya had seen before. Housed in a secure area of Nellis, the building looked ordinary from the outside, but inside was a marvel of technology. The central space was dominated by a sleek, angular aircraft that barely resembled traditional fighters. Its swept wings and fuselage blended together in a seamless design optimized for stealth and maneuverability rather than human comfort. Beautiful, isn't she? A voice said from behind Maya as she stood absorbing her first view of the XQ-12. Maya turned to find herself face to face with General Elena Martinez. In person, the general was even more impressive than her reputation suggested, tall and athletic despite being in her mid-50s, with short salt and pepper hair and intelligent eyes that missed nothing. She wore a flight suit rather than a dress uniform, suggesting she was still an active pilot despite her rank. General Martinez, Maya came to attention, saluting crisply. At ease, Lieutenant. Martinez returned the salute casually. We're a bit less formal in this program. Out here, results matter more than protocol. Maya relaxed slightly but remained respectful. It's an honor to join the team, ma'am. Martinez gestured toward the aircraft. The XQ-12 Phantom is the first of its kind, a combat aircraft designed from the ground up to operate with or without a pilot. Its flight envelope exceeds human tolerance when in autonomous mode, but we need exceptional pilots to help develop its systems and establish its capabilities when under human control. She turned her penetrating gaze directly to Maya. Major Washington speaks very highly of you. The Major has been an invaluable mentor, Maya acknowledged. She also shared the unaltered simulation data from Edwards, Martinez continued, watching Maya's reaction closely. Impressive performance under artificially adverse conditions. Most pilots would have complained or given up. Maya chose her words carefully. I believe in focusing on what I can control, ma'am. A hint of a smile touched Martinez's lips. A good philosophy for both flying and military careers. She began walking toward a briefing room adjacent to the hangar, indicating Maya should follow. You should know that Colonel Hammond contacted me after your orders were cut. Maya felt a chill. May I ask what he said? He expressed concerns about your experience level and suggested you might not be ready for a program of this nature. Martinez's tone was matter-of-fact, revealing nothing of her own opinion on the matter. I see. Maya kept her expression neutral despite the disappointment that Hammond was still attempting to undermine her. They reached the briefing room, where Martinez stopped and turned to face Maya directly. I've been in the Air Force for 32 years, Lieutenant. In that time, I've learned to form my own assessments of personnel rather than relying on others' opinions. Hammond is an excellent pilot and a competent program director, but his perspective is, let's say, traditional. Yes, ma'am, Maya agreed diplomatically. I'm not interested in tradition, Martinez said firmly. I'm interested in the future. And the future of air combat will belong to pilots who can think beyond the limitations of conventional flight, who can partner with AI systems and push boundaries in ways the previous generation never imagined. She opened the door to the briefing room, where a team of pilots and engineers was already assembled. You'll start in the simulator tomorrow, then progress to actual flights by the end of the week if all goes well. The learning curve is steep, and the technology is like nothing you've experienced before. Are you prepared for that challenge? Maya stood straighter, feeling a surge of determination. Absolutely, General. Good. Martinez nodded approvingly. Because I didn't bring you here to prove Hammond wrong, Lieutenant. I brought you here to help build the future of aerial combat. The fact that it might incidentally prove Hammond wrong is just a bonus. The next 6 weeks were the most intense of Maya's career. The XQ-12 program operated at a relentless pace, with days starting before dawn and often ending well after sunset. The team was small and elite, just 4 pilots including Maya, supported by a dedicated group of engineers and AI specialists who were constantly refining the aircraft's autonomous systems. The simulator training was unlike anything Maya had experienced at Edwards. The XQ-12's control systems were partly conventional and partly neural interface, requiring pilots to adapt to a new way of communicating with the aircraft. Rather than just manipulating physical controls, pilots needed to learn to think certain commands, which were then interpreted by the aircraft's AI system through sensors in the specialized helmet. Maya took to it with surprising ease. Her experience battling the handicapped simulators at Edwards had honed her adaptability, making her unusually skilled at compensating for unfamiliar control responses. By the end of her first week, she had progressed faster than the other pilots, earning grudging respect from teammates who had initially viewed the newcomer with skepticism. Her first actual flight in the XQ-12 came on day 8 of the program. The aircraft felt alive under her control, responding not just to her physical inputs, but seeming to anticipate her intentions through the neural interface. The sensation was disconcerting at first, like the difference between driving a car and riding a horse that could read your mind. But Maya quickly adapted, learning to trust the IS interpretations of her commands. Outstanding control discipline. Reyes, General Martinez commented after reviewing the flight data. You're maintaining the neural link with minimal drift. That's rare for a first flight. As the weeks progressed, Maya's natural talent combined with her relentless work ethic propelled her to the top of the small pilot group. She logged more flight hours than anyone else, often staying late to review data and suggest refinements. To the interface system, the engineers came to value her input, finding that her suggestions for improving the neural link consistently led to better performance metrics. 4 weeks into the program, an unexpected visitor arrived at Nellis. Maya was in the simulator when Colonel Hammond walked into the observation room alongside General Martinez. Through the simulator's canopy, Maya could see them watching her run through a complex series of maneuvers that pushed the XQ-12's envelope to its limits. When she emerged from the simulator, both officers were reviewing her performance data. Impressive improvement curve, Hammond acknowledged, his tone professional but reserved. The neural interface acceptance scores are particularly noteworthy. Lieutenant Reyes has the highest neural synchronization rate we've recorded, Martinez confirmed. Her ability to maintain clear command intent while performing complex maneuvers has significantly advanced our understanding of the human AI partnership. Hammond nodded, then turned to address Maya directly. It seems you've found your niche, Lieutenant. The autonomous systems program suits your capabilities. Though his words were complimentary on the surface, Maya detected the subtle implication that she was better suited to this experimental program than to real fighter piloting. It was a backhanded acknowledgement that managed to both recognize her success and diminish it simultaneously. "Thank you, sir," Maya responded evenly. The XQ-12 is an exceptional aircraft in either piloted or autonomous mode. The future of air combat will likely involve both. Hammond's expression tightened slightly at her refusal to accept his framing. Before he could respond, Martinez interjected smoothly. "Colonel Hammond is here to observe our progress before the demonstration. Next week," she explained to Maya, "the Joint Chiefs are sending representatives to evaluate the XQ-12's potential for wider deployment." Maya understood the significance immediately. A successful demonstration could mean full production and eventual integration into combat squadrons. Major achievement for the program and everyone involved. I'd like Lieutenant Reyes to be our primary demonstration pilot. Martinez continued, watching Hammond's reaction carefully. Her performance metrics are the most consistent, and she's developed several maneuvers that showcase the aircraft's capabilities particularly well. Hammond's surprise was evident, though he quickly masked it. That's an unusual choice for such a high-profile demonstration, General. Lieutenant Reyes is still relatively junior, and this program has more experienced test pilots. Experience isn't always measured in years, Colonel, Martinez replied smoothly. Sometimes it's measured in adaptability and innovation, qualities that Lieutenant Reyes has demonstrated consistently. The tension between the two officers was palpable, though maintained within the bounds of military courtesy. Maya remained silent, understanding that this was a power play happening above her rank level. Finally, Hammond inclined his head slightly. It's your program, General. I look forward to seeing the results. After Hammond departed, Martinez turned to Maya with a serious expression. That just raised the stakes considerably, Lieutenant. Hammond will be watching for any mistake, any hesitation during the demonstration, and he won't be the only one. Maya straightened her shoulders. I won't let you down, ma'am. I know you won't, Martinez said with quiet confidence. But understand what this represents. It's not just about you proving yourself anymore. It's about demonstrating that our approach to the future of aerial combat is viable. A lot of traditional-minded officers like Hammond are skeptical about neural interfaces and human-AI partnerships. They see it as diminishing the role of the pilot, when really it's expanding what pilots can do, Maya finished the thought. Exactly. The XQ-12 doesn't replace pilot skill, it amplifies it. That's what you'll be showing next week. Martinez fixed Maya with an intent look. So I need you at your absolute best. No distractions, no doubts. Understood, General. I'll be ready. The week leading up to the demonstration was a blur of preparation. Maya flew multiple practice runs each day, refining a sequence of maneuvers designed to showcase the XQ-12's unique capabilities. The engineering team made final adjustments to the neural interface based on her feedback, optimizing the connection between pilot and aircraft. The night before the demonstration, Maya couldn't sleep. She lay awake in her quarters, mind racing through the flight plan, visualizing each maneuver, anticipating potential complications. It wasn't just nerves, it was the weight of responsibility. Her performance tomorrow wouldn't just reflect on her. It would impact the future of the program and potentially the evolution of air combat itself. When she finally drifted off near dawn, her dreams were filled with flight soaring through impossible turns, the aircraft responding to her thoughts as if it were an extension of her own body. By the time her alarm sounded, she felt strangely calm, focused in a way that transcended ordinary concentration. The demonstration was scheduled for 0900 hours. By 0700, the secure viewing area was already filling with distinguished visitors, generals with chests full of ribbons, civilian officials from the Department of Defense, and technical experts from various aerospace contractors. Colonel Hammond was among them, speaking with a group of senior officers, occasionally glancing toward the hangar where the XQ-12 was being prepared. Maya went through her pre-flight checks methodically, focusing on each task with complete attention. The specialized flight suit for the XQ-12 included neural sensors that connected to the helmet interface, requiring precise calibration. The ground crew worked around her with practiced efficiency, each person focused on their specific responsibilities. All systems nominal, the lead engineer reported after the final diagnostics. Neural interfaces calibrated and stable. You're good to go, Lieutenant. Maya nodded, taking a deep breath before putting on her helmet. Through the specialized visor, she could see augmented reality displays overlaying her normal vision, providing flight data and system status without requiring her to look down at instruments. As she walked toward the aircraft, she spotted Major Washington standing off to one side of the viewing area. The Major had flown in from Edwards specifically for the demonstration, a gesture of support that meant more to Maya than she could express. They exchanged a brief nod, no words needed between them. General Martinez approached for a final check-in. "How are you feeling, Lieutenant?" "Ready, ma'am," Maya replied simply. Martinez studied her for a moment, then nodded approvingly. "Yes, you are. Remember, this isn't just about flying the aircraft. It's about demonstrating the partnership between human and machine. Show them what's possible when we embrace the future instead of clinging to the past." With those words resonating in her mind, Maya climbed into the XQ-12's cockpit. Unlike traditional fighter aircraft, the Phantom's pilot position was more integrated, almost like becoming part of the machine rather than sitting in it. As the canopy closed, she felt the neural interface activate, a peculiar sensation like a second consciousness gently touching the edges of her mind. XQ-12 to control, pre-flight checklist complete. Requesting clearance for demonstration sequence. Maya spoke into her communications link. "Control to XQ-12, you are cleared for takeoff. The range is secure. Proceed with demonstration sequence when ready," came the response. Maya took one final deep breath, centered herself, and then both thought and spoke the command. "Phantom, initiate launch sequence." The aircraft responded immediately, engines spooling up with a high-pitched whine that quickly built to a powerful roar. Maya felt the surge of acceleration as the XQ-12 rocketed down the runway and lifted into the clear Nevada sky, ascending at a rate that pressed her firmly into her seat despite the advanced G-force compensation systems. The demonstration had begun, and with it, a new chapter in her journey, one that would challenge not just Colonel Hammond's perceptions, but the very future of aerial combat itself. "Phantom, neural sync level 2, she commanded, both verbally and through the interface. A subtle shift occurred in the aircraft's responsiveness as the neural link deepened, creating a more intimate connection between pilot and machine. Sensation was unlike anything in conventional aviation, less like operating controls and more like extending her consciousness into the aircraft itself. "Beginning demonstration sequence," Maya announced, her voice calm despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. The first maneuver was relatively straightforward, a series of precision rolls and turns designed to showcase the aircraft's basic handling. Maya executed them flawlessly, the Phantom responding with a crispness that even the most advanced conventional fighters couldn't match. But this was merely the prelude, establishing a baseline before revealing what truly set the XQ-12 apart. Transitioning to enhanced neural guidance for advanced demonstration, she communicated to the ground. This was the moment where the XQ-12 would truly shine or fail spectacularly. The enhanced neural mode allowed for maneuvers that would be impossible with physical controls alone, requiring the pilot to visualize the desired flight path while the aircraft's AI interpreted and executed these intentions with superhuman precision. Maya had practiced this sequence hundreds of times in simulation and dozens of times in actual flight, but never with so much riding on the outcome. She took a deep breath, centered her mind, and then thought the command that would initiate the most challenging part of the demonstration. The Phantom responded instantly, banking hard into a turn that would have exceeded human tolerance without the advanced G-force compensation systems. Maya felt the pressure but remained focused, guiding the aircraft through a series of maneuvers that defied conventional aerodynamics. The Cobra followed immediately by a Herbst maneuver, then transitioning directly into a culbut without losing energy. These post-stall maneuvers, difficult enough to execute individually in the most advanced fighters, flowed together in a seamless sequence that demonstrated the Phantom's revolutionary control systems. The aircraft moved less like a machine bound by physics and more like a creature born to the sky, each impossible turn flowing naturally into the next. Through the neural link, Maya could sense the aircraft's status, engine performance, structural loads, energy state without needing to check instruments. This intimate connection allowed her to push closer to the edge of the envelope while maintaining precise control, finding that perfect balance between spectacular performance and safety margins. For the finale, Maya had designed a maneuver she called the quantum shift, a complex sequence, combining elements of several advanced fighter techniques into something entirely new. It began with a vertical climb, transitioned into what appeared to be the beginning of a flat spin, but then abruptly reversed direction while maintaining forward momentum in a way that should have been physically impossible. The maneuver had initially been deemed too aggressive by the engineering team, who feared it might overstress the airframe. But Maya had gradually refined it during testing, working with the engineers to understand exactly where the true limits were, rather than accepting the conservative estimates. Today would be its public debut. As she initiated the quantum shift, Maya felt the aircraft respond perfectly to her mental commands, executing each phase of the complex maneuver with precision that matched her intent. Through the neural link, she sensed the structural loads, building but remaining within tolerances, the engines pushing to maximum output exactly when needed, the flight surfaces moving in perfect coordination. The Phantom completed the seemingly impossible sequence, transitioning from a maneuver that should have led to unrecoverable loss of control directly into stable level flight. Maya brought the aircraft around in a sweeping turn that positioned it perfectly for the landing approach, the entire demonstration having unfolded with the precision of a choreographed dance. As she guided the Phantom back to the runway, executing a textbook landing despite the aircraft's unconventional aerodynamics, Maya allowed herself a small smile. She couldn't see the audience's reaction from the cockpit, but the complete silence on the radio channel told her everything she needed to know. She had left them speechless. After completing the shutdown sequence and disconnecting from the neural interface, always a strange sensation. Like stepping out of a second skin, Maya removed her helmet and climbed down from the cockpit. General Martinez was waiting at the bottom of the ladder, her usually stoic expression replaced by one of undisguised satisfaction. "That," Martinez said quietly as Maya saluted, "was exactly what we needed them to see." The general returned the salute and then, in a rare gesture, extended her hand for a handshake. The quantum shift was particularly impressive. I didn't realize we'd approved that for the demonstration. Maya accepted the handshake, noting the firm grip. "It was a recent addition, ma'am. The engineering team signed off on it yesterday." After reviewing the stress analysis data, Martinez's eyes crinkled slightly at the corners. "Bold move, Lieutenant. But that's precisely why you're flying the Phantom instead of someone with more conventional instincts." She glanced toward the viewing area, where the distinguished visitors were now engaged in animated conversation. "Come, they'll want to speak with you." As they walked toward the viewing area, Maya spotted Colonel Hammond standing slightly apart from the main group. His expression was unreadable, but his posture had changed, the dismissive confidence replaced by something more thoughtful, perhaps even reassessing. The reception from the other officials was immediate and enthusiastic. A 3-star general from Air Combat Command was the first to approach. "Remarkable demonstration, Lieutenant," he said, his weathered face showing genuine admiration. "In 40 years of aviation, I don't believe I've seen maneuvers executed with that level of precision. The aircraft's capabilities are impressive, but your control was extraordinary." "Thank you, sir," Maya responded, maintaining professional composure despite the surge of pride his words evoked. Others offered similar praise, technical questions, and observations. Maya answered each inquiry with precision and confidence, explaining the neural interface system and how it enhanced rather than replaced traditional pilot skills. Throughout the discussion, she was acutely aware of Hammond standing at the periphery, listening but not participating. Finally, as the group began to disperse toward the briefing facility for a more detailed technical presentation, Hammond approached. Maya braced herself, unsure what to expect. That was... He paused, seeming to search for the right words. That was not what I anticipated, Lieutenant Reyes. Maya maintained her professional demeanor. Thank you, sir. Hammond studied her for a moment, his expression complex. The neural interface. Does it essentially fly the plane for you? The question revealed his fundamental misunderstanding, or perhaps his deliberate mischaracterization, of the technology. It was the same argument traditionalists had made. With each advancement in aviation, from fly-by-wire systems to computer-assisted targeting. No, sir, Maya replied evenly. The neural interface translates my intentions into control inputs more directly than physical controls allow. The pilot remains the decision maker. The interface simply enables more precise execution of those decisions. Hammond frowned slightly. But the aircraft's AI must be doing some of the work. Some of those maneuvers shouldn't be physically possible. The AI handles the translation of intent to control surface movements, sir. But the intent, the decision of what to do and when remains entirely with the pilot. Maya met his gaze directly. It's a partnership, not a replacement. The neural interface actually demands more from the pilot, not less absolute clarity of intention and extraordinary focus. Something shifted in Hammond's expression, not quite acceptance, but perhaps the first crack in a wall of certainty. I see. Before he could continue, an aide approached to inform them that the technical briefing was about to begin. Hammond nodded, then turned back to Maya. You've given me something to think about, he said. His voice was calmer than she had ever heard. Maybe we can talk more when we return to Edwards. Maya blinked. Return to Edwards, sir? Yes, Hammond replied. General Martinez and I have talked about the future of the program. The XQ-12 is entering a new phase. It will need to work with regular squadrons. Your experience with both the neural system and regular aircraft makes you the right person to help. It wasn't an apology. But from Hammond, it meant a lot. I'd be glad to help, sir, Maya said, keeping her voice steady, though she was surprised. Hammond nodded and walked off to join the others. Maya stood there for a moment, thinking about what just happened. Well done, Lieutenant, said Major Washington. Beside her. Both the flying and the way you handled him. Maya smiled. Thank you for being here. It meant a lot. Washington stayed calm, but her eyes showed pride. I wouldn't miss it. That last move, the quantum shift, right? That was impressive. It almost didn't make the test, Maya said. The engineers were worried, but you convinced them? Data convinced them, Maya said. I showed where the limits really were, based on test flights and new simulations. Washington smiled a little. Sounds familiar. Using facts to push past limits. She looked toward where Hammond had gone. You've made an impression. That's not easy. I don't think he's fully convinced, Maya said. Changing minds takes time, Washington said. Hammond is from a different time. Men like him don't say they were wrong. They just change slowly without saying it out loud. Maya nodded, taking it in. So what now? Now, Washington said, pointing to the building. You explained to a room full of generals how you did something they thought was impossible. And then you prepare for what's next. The meeting lasted 3 hours. Maya answered questions about the neural system, along with the engineers. She explained things in a way pilots could understand. By the end, it was clear. The XQ-12 would move forward. What started as a test was now heading toward becoming real. That night, the team had a small celebration. Even General Martinez stopped by for a short toast. Maya was now surrounded by engineers and pilots who once doubted her. But now, they treated her like one of them. Later, Maya stepped outside. The desert night was cool and clear. Plane sat quietly under the stars. "Nice view, right?" came Washington's voice nearby. "It never gets old," Maya said. They stood in silence for a bit. "I got my new orders," Washington said. "I'm heading to the Air Force Academy to lead their flight training program." Maya looked surprised. "That's a big role." "It is," Washington said. "And I asked for you to join me after you finish with the XQ-12. Maya felt honored. "Thank you, Major." "The Academy needs teachers who know both old and new flight systems," Washington said. "You're perfect for that." This wasn't just a new job. It was a chance to help shape the future for others too. "Thanks for believing in me," Maya said. "From the start." Washington faced her. "I saw something in you more than skill. You didn't ask people to accept you. You just kept proving you deserved it." Maya felt the truth in those words. Her journey wasn't about proving others wrong. It was about reaching her own goals. "There's something else," Washington said. "Hammond didn't bring you back to Edwards on his own. The Secretary of the Air Force asked about you after seeing today's test data." Maya's eyes widened. "The Secretary remembered me?" "Yes, and has been watching your progress." Washington's face turned serious. "That kind of attention means your future could go far beyond where you are now." Maya smiled. "No pressure, right?" "Exactly," Washington said, with a slight grin. She checked her watch. "I need to go. Early flight tomorrow." As she turned to leave, Maya asked, "When you helped me at Edwards, did you think it would lead to this?" Washington paused. "I knew you had great potential. I just didn't know where it would lead," she smiled. "That's the thing about breaking limits. You don't know what's out there until you cross them. You just have to be ready and brave enough to take the chance." She walked back inside, leaving Maya under the stars. The night was quiet, but her mind was full of ideas, not just for herself, but for everyone who might follow in her path. The next day, they got back to work on the XQ-12. The test was done. Now came the hard part, making it work with regular planes in mock combat. Maya helped lead the planning. She used her knowledge of both old and new systems to find problems and fix them. A week later, Hammond came back for another meeting. He was still strict but listened more now, especially to Maya's advice. During a break, he came up to her. "Lieutenant, I looked at your old application to the flight simulator program at Edwards." Maya stayed calm. "Yes, sir?" "Your paper on the future of flying systems was ahead of its time, based on what I've seen." Hammond seemed to choose his words carefully. "At the time, I considered it overly theoretical, lacking practical grounding in actual combat aviation." Maya waited, sensing there was more coming. "I may have been hasty in that assessment." Hammond continued, the admission clearly difficult for him. "Your work here has demonstrated a practical application of those theories that exceeds what many of us thought possible." It was as close to an acknowledgement of misjudgment as Hammond was likely to offer. Maya recognized the significance of the moment, not just for herself, but for what it represented about the possibility of changing even the most entrenched perspectives. "Thank you, sir," she replied simply. "The XQ-12 has given all of us an opportunity to rethink what's possible in aviation." Hammond nodded, seemingly appreciative of her diplomatic response. "The integration phase at Edwards will be challenging. We'll be asking conventional pilots to adapt to concepts that contradict much of their training and experience. Your insight into both worlds will be valuable." The word valuable hung in the air, a term Hammond had never before applied to Maya or her contributions. It represented a fundamental shift in how he viewed her role and abilities. "I look forward to contributing to that effort, sir," Maya said. Hammond studied her for a moment longer. "After the integration phase concludes, Major Washington has requested you for her staff at the Academy. It's a good position, influential in shaping the next generation of pilots." "Yes, sir." The Major informed me of her request. I've endorsed it, Hammond said, the statement simple but significant. Your experience should be shared with cadets who will fly in a world very different from the one I trained for. With that, he nodded once and returned to the briefing room, leaving Maya to process what had just occurred. Hammond's endorsement of her position at the academy represented more than just professional approval. It was an acknowledgement that the future of aviation would be shaped by pilots like her, not held back by the limitations of the past. Later that day, Maya received a message requesting her presence in General Martinez's office. When she arrived, she found both Martinez and an aide from the Secretary of the Air Force's office waiting. Lieutenant Reyes, Martinez began after the formalities were complete. The Secretary was impressed by the demonstration last week and has been reviewing your complete service record. The aide, a sharp-looking lieutenant colonel, nodded in confirmation. The Secretary has a particular interest in identifying officers who demonstrate both technical excellence and the ability to innovate beyond established paradigms. Maya listened carefully, uncertain where this was leading but recognizing its importance. There's a new initiative being formed, Martinez continued. A joint task force focused on next-generation air dominance technologies, particularly the human-machine interface aspects that you've helped pioneer with the XQ-12. The aide picked up seamlessly. The Secretary would like to appoint you to this task force, Lieutenant, upon completion of your duties with the integration phase at Edwards. It would involve working directly with senior leadership on shaping acquisition and training policies for neural interface systems across multiple aircraft platforms. The opportunity was extraordinary, a chance to influence not just a single program but the entire future direction of Air Force aviation technology. It was also a position typically reserved for officers much senior to Maya's current rank. This would, of course, come with a promotion recommendation, the aide added, as if reading her thoughts. The position requires a captain's rank at minimum. Maya maintained her composure despite the surge of emotions. I'm honored by the Secretary's confidence, sir. Martinez leaned forward slightly. This isn't just about recognition for your achievements, Lieutenant. It's about ensuring that the insights you've gained through your unique experience aren't lost in the bureaucracy. The path from experimental technology to operational capability is fraught with obstacles, technical, financial, and cultural. The Secretary believes you have the perspective needed to help navigate those challenges. The aide nodded in agreement. Your background is unusual high achievement in conventional aviation, combined with pioneering work in neural interface systems. Add to that your direct experience with both institutional resistance and what it takes to overcome it, and you represent exactly the kind of officer the Secretary wants driving this initiative forward. Maya took a moment to absorb the magnitude of what was being offered. It wasn't just a career advancement. It was an opportunity to ensure that the barriers she had faced would be systematically dismantled for those who came after her. I would be honored to serve in that capacity, she said finally, her voice steady despite the emotion behind it. Excellent, the aide replied with a satisfied nod. The formal orders will be processed as your current assignment concludes. In the meantime, the Secretary asks that you continue your outstanding work on the XQ-12 integration. The success of that phase will set the stage for broader implementation of the technology. After the aide departed, Martinez remained silent for a moment, studying Maya with an expression that mixed professional assessment with something like pride. You've come a long way from that lieutenant who arrived at Nellis 6 weeks ago, Martinez observed. Though I suspect the potential was always there, just waiting for the right opportunity. I've had exceptional mentors, ma'am, Maya acknowledged. Yourself and Major Washington particularly. Martinez nodded thoughtfully. Good mentors can open doors, Lieutenant, but only the individual can walk through them. And you've done more than walk, you've soared. She gestured toward the window where the distant shape of the XQ-12 was visible on the flight line. That aircraft represents the future of aviation, but it took a pilot with extraordinary skills to demonstrate its true potential. Remember that as you move forward, technology enables, but human excellence defines what becomes possible. As Maya left the office, those words resonated deeply. Her journey had never been about escaping the challenges of human piloting through technology. It had been about expanding what human pilots could achieve when partnered with the right systems, the right support, and the right opportunities. The sun was setting over Nellis as Maya walked across the base, casting long shadows from the aircraft parked along the flight line. In the distance, the XQ-12 stood apart, its distinctive silhouette unlike any conventional fighter. Yet it wasn't the aircraft itself that had changed the course of her career, and potentially the future of aviation. It was what she had proven was possible when piloting it. Colonel Hammond had laughed at her first simulation attempt, dismissing her potential based on preconceived notions of what a pilot should be. Now those same skills he had derided had redefined what was possible in the cockpit, breaking records and opening doors that would benefit countless pilots who would follow. As the desert sky darkened and the first stars appeared, Maya allowed herself a moment of reflection on the journey that had brought her here and the new horizon that now lay before her. The path hadn't been easy, but then again, nothing truly groundbreaking ever was. The greatest achievements didn't come from following established routes, but from charting new ones, from refusing to accept artificial limitations, and from having the courage to demonstrate excellence even when others expected failure. That was the lesson she would carry forward, not just for herself, but for all those who would follow. True potential isn't defined by others' expectations, but by one's own determination to surpass them. Aviation history is marked by moments when someone did what others thought impossible. She continued her lecture, her voice carrying effortlessly through the space. From the Wright brothers at Kitty Hawk to Chuck Yeager breaking the sound barrier. Each of these milestones was preceded by experts explaining precisely why they couldn't be achieved. Maya clicked to the next slide, showing the sleek lines of the XQ-12 Phantom, now a declassified program, following its successful integration into operational squadrons. The neural interface system you see here was once considered a theoretical curiosity, interesting in concept, but impractical for actual combat aviation. Today, every one of you will train on this technology before graduation. She paused, letting that sink in. Not because the technology itself is revolutionary, though it is, but because someone refused to accept the limitations others had placed on what was possible. In the front row, Major Eliza Washington, now Colonel Washington, following her promotion to head the Academy's entire aviation program, nodded slightly, a gesture of approval visible only to Maya. Your generation will fly aircraft we can barely imagine today, Maya continued. The question isn't whether the technology will advance, it's whether you'll be ready to advance with it, to see possibilities where others see obstacles, to persist when conventional wisdom suggests you should abandon your course. She closed her presentation with a quote that had become something of a personal mantra. The ceiling of what's possible is rarely a technical limitation, it's a limitation of imagination and persistence. The applause was immediate and enthusiastic. These cadets had grown up hearing about the legendary quantum shift maneuver and the pilot who had executed it, stories that had already entered Air Force lore alongside tales of the first jet fighters and the Mercury astronauts. As the cadets filed out following the lecture, a young woman approached the podium, petite, with determined eyes that reminded Maya of herself a decade earlier. Major Reyes, the cadet said, coming to attention. Cadet Sarah Chun, 3rd year. I wanted to thank you for your presentation. Maya nodded acknowledgement. At ease, cadet. What did you find most relevant? Chun relaxed slightly, but maintained her professional demeanor. Your point about persistence in the face of institutional skepticism, Mama. I've encountered resistance to my interest in the experimental test pilot school. Maya understood immediately. Despite significant progress, certain corners of military aviation still harbored outdated notions about who belonged in the cockpit. "Let me guess," Maya said with a knowing smile. "Someone suggested you consider another specialty because test piloting requires certain innate capabilities." Chun's eyes widened in surprise. "Almost those exact words, ma'am, from my squadron commander, Captain Reynolds?" Maya asked, having reviewed the Academy's current leadership roster before her visit. "Yes, ma'am." Maya nodded thoughtfully. Captain Reynolds flew traditional fighters his entire career. His perspective is limited by his experience. She studied the young cadet for a moment. "Your simulator scores are exceptional, particularly in the neural interface adaptation metrics." It wasn't a question, but Chun responded as if it were. "Thank you, ma'am. I've been putting in extra hours on the advanced systems. Just like the extra hours you've been logging between 0400 and 0600 when most of your classmates are still asleep." Maya asked with a raised eyebrow. Chun looked startled. "How did you?" "Because I did the same thing," Maya interrupted gently. "And because Colonel Washington mentioned a particularly dedicated cadet who reminded her of someone she once mentored." Understanding dawned on Chun's face. "Colonel Washington has been supportive. She has an eye for talent that others might overlook," Maya agreed. "As for your test pilot school ambitions, the selection board will be reviewing applications next month. I happen to sit on that board." Chun straightened imperceptibly. "I wasn't aware of that, ma'am." "I'm not suggesting your path will be easy," Maya cautioned. "But I am suggesting that Captain Reynolds' opinion isn't the final word on your capabilities or potential." The hope that flared in the cadet's eyes was painfully familiar to Maya, the same hope she had felt when Major Washington had first offered her a path forward at Edwards. "Thank you, Major," Chun said with new determination in her voice. "Don't thank me yet, Cadet," Maya replied. "Just make sure your application is exceptional. Excellence remains the most persuasive argument against prejudice." As Chun departed, Colonel Washington approached from where she had been observing the exchange. "Mentoring the next generation already, Major?" Maya smiled. "Just passing on some wisdom I received from an exceptional officer." Washington's expression softened slightly. "It's how progress happens, not all at once, but person by person, opportunity by opportunity." She glanced at her watch. "We should head to the meeting. The secretary doesn't like to be kept waiting, even virtually." They walked together across the academy grounds toward the secure conference facility. The autumn air was crisp, cadets moving purposefully between buildings, the distant mountains providing a majestic backdrop to the campus. "Have you decided about the Pentagon position?" Washington asked as they walked. Maya had been wrestling with this decision for weeks. Following her success leading the Joint Neural Interface Task Force, she had been offered a position as military assistant to the Secretary of the Air Force, a prestigious role that would place her at the center of policy decisions affecting the future of aviation. "I'm still considering it," Maya admitted. "It's an incredible opportunity, but you're not sure you want to leave the cockpit for a desk," Washington finished for her. "Exactly. The policy work is important, but I became a pilot to fly," Maya sighed. "Yet I also recognize that having a voice at that level could help shape opportunities for the next generation of pilots." Washington nodded understanding. The eternal dilemma of leadership, whether to continue doing what you love or move into positions where you can enable others to do it. They reached the secure facility and passed through multiple layers of security before entering the conference room where the virtual meeting would take place. Several other officers were already present, preparing materials for the briefing. At precisely 1400 hours, the large screen activated, showing the Secretary of the Air Force in her Pentagon office. Now in her second term in the position, the Secretary had become a powerful advocate for technological innovation, balanced with Human-centered design, a philosophy that aligned perfectly with Maya's approach to the neural interface systems. Good afternoon, everyone, the secretary began. Before we dive into the agenda, I'd like to acknowledge Maya Reyes' contributions to the neural interface program. The latest performance metrics from the operational squadrons are exceptional pilot. Adaptation rates 30% higher than projected, and interface synchronization scores that exceed our most optimistic estimates. Maya acknowledged the praise with a professional nod. Thank you, Madam Secretary. The credit belongs to the entire team, particularly the engineers who refined the system based on pilot feedback. Always deflecting praise to your team, the Secretary observed with a smile. A hallmark of good leadership, but in this case, I've heard directly from those engineers about your personal impact on the program's direction. The meeting proceeded through various technical updates and policy discussions. Maya presented her section with precision and clarity, highlighting both achievements and challenges with equal honesty, another leadership principle she had embraced throughout her career. As the meeting concluded, the secretary addressed Maya directly. Major, I'd like a word with you privately. Could you stay on the line after the others have disconnected? Once they were alone, the secretary's manner became more personal. Have you considered my offer, Maya? The use of her first name indicated they were speaking outside the formal chain of command, a privilege the secretary extended rarely and only to those she considered potential future leaders of the service. I have, Madam Secretary, Maya replied. I'm honored by your confidence, but I'm still weighing the trade-offs. The secretary nodded understanding. Between continuing as an operational test pilot and moving into policy leadership, I faced a similar decision early in my career. She leaned forward slightly. Let me share something that helped me decide. The question isn't whether you'll miss flying, you will. The question is where you can make the most significant impact on the future of aviation. Maya considered this framing carefully. I've been fortunate to help develop technology that's changing how we fly. Moving to policy would mean stepping away from that direct involvement. Would it? The secretary challenged gently. Or would it mean ensuring that the next breakthrough technology receives the support it needs, instead of being stifled by bureaucratic resistance or budget constraints? She paused. You've experienced firsthand how institutional obstacles can delay innovation. As my military assistant, you'd be in a position to dismantle those obstacles for others. The perspective struck Maya forcefully. Her journey had never been solely about personal achievement. It had been about expanding possibilities for all pilots, regardless of background or physical characteristics. There's another factor to consider, the secretary continued. The position would come with promotion to lieutenant colonel, ahead of the normal timeline. That level of influence typically takes years longer to achieve through the operational track. Maya understood the significance rank translated directly to impact in military structures. May I ask why you're specifically interested in me? For this role, there are more experienced officers available. Experience isn't always measured in years, the secretary replied, echoing what General Martinez had told Maya years earlier. I need someone who understands both the technical aspects of next-generation aviation and the human factors that determine success or failure. Someone who has navigated institutional resistance and emerged stronger for it. She leaned back in her chair. But most importantly, I need someone who sees aviation not as it has been, but as it could be. Your entire career has been defined by that vision from your academy. Thesis on neural interfaces to your record-breaking demonstration. Flight to your leadership of the Joint Task Force. The secretary's words resonated deeply with Maya's sense of purpose. When would you need my decision? Take the week to consider, the secretary replied. But Maya, whatever you decide, remember that your impact extends far beyond your own achievements. Every barrier you've overcome has created openings for others to follow. After the call ended, Maya sat quietly in the conference room, processing the conversation. Colonel Washington entered a few minutes later, having anticipated that Maya might need space to think after speaking with the secretary. Difficult conversations with leaders of that caliber tend to clarify your thinking, Washington observed. Taking a seat across from Maya, Maya smiled ruefully. She made a compelling case for the Pentagon position. I expected she would, Washington replied. She's been watching your career since that demonstration at Edwards. She recognizes the same qualities in you that I saw years ago, not just exceptional flying skills, but the potential to transform the institution itself. Is that what you saw? Maya asked, genuinely curious. When you first offered to help me with the simulator? Washington considered the question carefully. I saw someone being systematically undermined, despite obvious talent. That alone would have warranted intervention. She paused. But yes, I also saw someone with the potential to do more than just succeed within the system, someone who might actually change it for the better. Maya absorbed this insight, seeing her journey through new eyes. Did you ever regret it, taking that risk for someone unproven? Not for a moment, Washington replied without hesitation. Though I'll admit, your quantum shift maneuver nearly gave me a heart attack the first time I saw it. A rare smile crossed her face. Some mentoring relationships are investments that pay dividends far beyond what you initially imagine. Their conversation was interrupted by Maya's secure tablet, signaling an incoming message. She glanced at it and straightened immediately. What is it? Washington asked, noting the change in Maya's demeanor. Colonel Hammond, Maya said, surprised. He's requesting a meeting while I'm at the academy. Washington raised an eyebrow. Interesting timing. He must have heard about the secretary's offer. Maya frowned slightly. How would he know about that? It hasn't been announced. Maya, Washington said with a knowing look, you've been at the center of military aviation's most significant technological advancement in decades. People at Hammond's level pay attention to where such individuals might be positioned next. The meeting with Hammond was scheduled for later that afternoon in the Academy's distinguished visitors' quarters. Maya arrived precisely on time, curious about what her former adversary, now the commander of the Air Force Test Center at Edwards, might want to discuss. Hammond had aged visibly in the 5 years since Maya had last seen him, his hair now completely gray, the lines in his face deeper. Yet he carried himself with the same military bearing, his uniform impeccable as he rose to greet her. Major Reyes, he said, extending his hand. Thank you for making time on short notice. Colonel Hammond, Maya replied, accepting the handshake. It's been some time. 5 years, 3 months, Hammond confirmed with surprising precision. Since the XQ-1-2 integration phase concluded at Edwards, they settled into seats in the small meeting room, an uncomfortable silence stretching between them momentarily. Maya waited, allowing Hammond to establish the purpose of this unexpected encounter. I understand the secretary has offered you a position as her military assistant, he said finally. Maya maintained her professional composure despite her surprise. That he indeed knew of the offer. That information isn't public yet, sir. Hammond acknowledged this with a slight nod. At my level, we hear things, particularly about officers whose careers are being watched closely by Pentagon leadership. Another silence fell, which Hammond eventually broke with an unexpected question. Do you remember your first day in the simulator at Edwards? Under my command? The question caught Maya off guard. Yes, sir. I do. I laughed, Hammond said, his tone matter-of-fact rather than apologetic. When you failed the scenario for the 3rd time, I made it clear I didn't believe you belonged in the program. Maya remained silent, uncertain where this was leading. I was wrong, Hammond stated simply. The words hung in the air between them, a straightforward acknowledgement that Maya had never expected to hear. Not just about your capabilities, but about my approach to identifying and developing talent. He leaned forward slightly. The Air Force Test Center is implementing a complete overhaul of our pilot selection criteria, focusing on cognitive adaptability and neural interface compatibility rather than traditional metrics alone. The proposal has my full endorsement. Maya processed this information, recognizing its significance. The test center set standards that influenced pilot selection throughout the Air Force. This represented a fundamental shift in how future aviators would be identified and developed. "That's a significant change, sir," she observed carefully. "It is," Hammond agreed. "One that should have happened years ago, before we nearly lost talent like yours due to outdated thinking." He paused. "The reason I wanted to meet is to ask you to consider declining the secretary's offer." Maya blinked in surprise. "Sir?" "Not because it isn't a prestigious position," Hammond clarified quickly, "but because I'm preparing to submit your name for a different role, commander of the experimental test pilot school at Edwards." The offer was so unexpected that Maya momentarily lost her usual composure. The test pilot school was the elite institution that trained the Air Force's most skilled aviators to evaluate new aircraft, a position of enormous influence over the future of military aviation. "That position is typically held by a full colonel," she noted once she had recovered from her surprise. "Yes," Hammond acknowledged, "which is why the recommendation includes an accompanying promotion. Your record more than justifies it, particularly given your leadership of the Joint Task Force." Maya studied Hammond carefully, searching for any hidden agenda but finding none. "May I ask why you'd support me for this position, given our history?" Hammond's expression became reflective. 5 years ago, I witnessed something I'd never seen before: a pilot execute maneuvers that should have been physically impossible, demonstrating that my understanding of aviation's limits was fundamentally flawed." He met her gaze directly. "It forced me to reconsider many things I had taken as certainties throughout my career." He continued with unexpected candor. "The future of military aviation will be shaped by the pilots we select and how we train them. The old metrics, the ones I used to judge you initially, are increasingly irrelevant. We need leadership at the test pilot school that understands both where we've been and where we're going." Maya absorbed this explanation, recognizing its authenticity. "And you believe I'm that leader?" "I know you are," Hammond stated with conviction. "Your technical understanding of neural interface systems, combined with your experience as a conventional pilot and your proven leadership of the Joint Task Force, makes you uniquely qualified." He paused. "The fact that you succeeded despite the obstacles I placed in your path only confirms your exceptional capabilities." The conversation had taken such an unexpected turn that Maya needed a moment to process its implications. The position Hammond was proposing would place her at the center of experimental aviation, directly influencing how future test pilots were selected and trained, a different kind of impact than the policy role the secretary had offered, but potentially more aligned with her personal passion for flight. "The secretary's offer is extremely generous," Maya said carefully. "As is yours, sir. I'll need to consider both carefully." Hammond nodded understanding. "Of course. But before you decide, I'd like you to meet someone." He checked his watch. He should be arriving momentarily. As if on cue, there was a knock at the door. Hammond called for the person to enter, and a young lieutenant stepped into the room, coming to attention and saluting crisply. "Major Reyes, this is Lieutenant Michael Chun," Hammond introduced. "One of our most promising test pilots at Edwards." Maya returned the salute, noting the name with interest. "Chun? Any relation to Captain James Chun from the Advanced Tactical Flight Simulation Initiative?" The young man smiled. "He's my uncle, ma'am. He spoke highly of you during my academy. Days said you changed his perspective on what was possible in a cockpit." Maya was surprised by this connection. James Chun had been one of the few pilots at Edwards who had treated her with consistent respect, even during the most difficult periods of Hammond's resistance. Lieutenant Chun is part of our next generation of test pilots, Hammond explained. He's been selected for the XQ-15 program, the successor to your Phantom, with an even more advanced neural interface system. Chun's expression was earnest as he addressed Maya. Your work with the XQ-12 is why I became a test pilot, ma'am. The quantum shift maneuver is still studied at the Academy as an example of breaking perceived limitations. Hammond allowed this to sink in before continuing. Lieutenant Chun represents the future of our test pilot community officers who grew up studying your achievements, who entered service expecting to use neural interfaces as naturally as previous generations used stick and rudder. The implication was clear. Maya's impact had already extended beyond her personal achievements to influence an entire new generation of pilots. The test pilot school position would allow her to directly shape how that generation was trained and developed. After Lieutenant Chun was dismissed, Hammond addressed Maya once more. I don't expect an immediate answer. Both options before you offer significant opportunities to influence the future of aviation, just in different ways. He rose, indicating the meeting was concluding. Whatever you decide, I wanted you to know that your demonstration flight 5 years ago didn't just prove me wrong about you. It fundamentally changed how I evaluate talent and potential. That legacy will continue regardless of which path you choose next. The sincere acknowledgement from someone who had once been her most significant obstacle was unexpectedly moving. Thank you, sir, Maya said simply. No, Major Reyes, Hammond replied with genuine respect in his voice. Thank you for persisting despite the barriers I placed in your way. The Air Force is better for it. That evening, Maya found herself walking alone along the edge of the Academy airfield, watching the sunset paint the distant mountains in gold and crimson. The two paths before her represented different ways of shaping the future one, through policy and institutional leadership. The other through direct influence over the next generation of test pilots. Her phone chimed with a message from Colonel Washington, rooftop of Mitchell Hall in 15 minutes. Some decisions are better made with perspective. The rooftop observation deck of Mitchell Hall offered a panoramic view of the entire academy. Campus, the cadet area, the airfield, the chapel with its distinctive spires, all set against the majestic backdrop of the Rocky Mountains. Washington was already there when Maya arrived, gazing out at the vista. I always come here when I need to make important decisions, Washington said as Maya joined her at the railing. It helps to see the bigger picture literally and figuratively. I could use some perspective right now, Maya admitted. Hammond offered me command of the test pilot school at Edwards. Washington didn't seem surprised. With promotion to colonel, I assume? Yes, pending approval, of course. So now you have two extraordinary offers, Washington observed. The secretary's position would place you at the center of policy decisions affecting the entire Air Force. Hammond's would put you in direct control of selecting and training the next generation of test pilots. Maya nodded. Both would allow me to influence the future, just in different ways. And both represent a remarkable journey from where you started, Washington added. From a lieutenant being sabotaged in a simulator, to having two of the most powerful figures in military aviation competing for your talents. The observation made Maya smile despite her dilemma. When you put it that way, it sounds like a problem. Many would envy. It is, Washington agreed. But it's still a genuine crossroads in your career. She turned to face Maya directly. What matters most to you? Policy that shapes institutions, or leadership that directly touches lives? Maya considered the question carefully. When I joined the Air Force, all I wanted was to fly to push the boundaries of what was possible in the sky. I never imagined being in a position to shape how others might follow that same dream. Yet here you are, Washington observed. Because you refused to accept the limitations others tried to impose on you. Maya gazed out at the academy grounds, where cadets were visible moving between buildings in the gathering dusk. Among them were young women like Cadet Sarah Chun, who harbored the same dreams Maya had once held and who faced some of the same obstacles, despite the progress that had been made. The secretary argued that I could remove institutional barriers. From the policy level, Maya said. Hammond believes I could reshape the criteria for what makes an exceptional test pilot from within the system. Washington nodded thoughtfully. Both are valid approaches to creating change. The question is which aligns best with your personal strengths and passions. As Maya contemplated this, her gaze was drawn to the airfield, where several training aircraft were landing in the fading light. Cadets completing their evening sorties before darkness fell completely. I became a pilot because I wanted to fly, she said slowly. But I persisted despite Hammond's obstacles because I needed to prove something, not just to him, but to everyone who thought certain types of people didn't belong in a cockpit. She turned to Washington, clarity suddenly replacing her uncertainty. The test pilot school shapes the future by selecting and training the pilots who will evaluate tomorrow's aircraft. If I can ensure that selection is based truly on ability rather than preconception, that the Chuns and the Reyeses of the world are judged by their skills rather than their background, that could change aviation more fundamentally than any policy directive. Washington smiled, a rare expression of genuine warmth. I think you've found your answer. I believe I have, Maya agreed. The policy work is crucial, but my heart has always been in the cockpit and in helping others reach their potential as pilots. The test pilot school would allow me to do both. As they stood watching the last light fade from the mountains, Washington placed a hand briefly on Maya's shoulder, an uncharacteristic gesture from the normally reserved officer. From lieutenant to colonel in just 7 years, she observed. Commanding the institution that defines excellence in military aviation. Not bad for someone who couldn't even keep it level in a simulator. Maya laughed softly at the reference to Hammond's original mockery. Life has a way of coming full circle, doesn't it? It does, Washington agreed. And the best leaders remember where they started, using those experiences to light the way for others. As they left the rooftop, Maya felt a profound sense of clarity about her path forward. The journey from that humiliating moment in the Edwards simulator to command of the test pilot school had been marked by obstacles that once seemed insurmountable. Yet each challenge had ultimately strengthened her resolve and expanded her understanding of what was truly possible, not just in aviation, but in transforming institutions from within. 6 months later, Colonel Maya Reyes stood addressing the newest class of test pilot candidates at Edwards Air Force Base. Among them was Cadet Sarah Chun, now Lieutenant Chun, who had indeed earned her place despite Captain Reynolds' skepticism. The history of flight is written by those who refuse to accept conventional limitations, Maya told the assembled pilots. From the Wright brothers being told heavier-than-air flight was impossible, to the sound barrier being deemed an impenetrable wall, to neural interfaces being dismissed as science fiction. She gestured to the prototype XQ-15 visible through the hangar windows, the next generation of the aircraft she had helped pioneer. Your task as test pilots isn't just to evaluate new technology, it's to reimagine what's possible when human skill meets innovative design. To see potential where others see only obstacles. Maya's gaze swept across the diverse group before her, men and women of various backgrounds, all selected based on their demonstrated abilities rather than conformity to traditional pilot stereotypes. 5 years ago, I executed a maneuver called the quantum shift that many believed was physically impossible, she continued. Today, that maneuver is taught as a standard capability of neural interface aircraft. Tomorrow, one of you will discover something that makes my achievement seem routine by comparison. She smiled as she delivered her final thought, the lesson that had defined her own journey from ridiculed lieutenant to respected leader. Remember this above all. The most powerful limits are the ones we place on ourselves or allow others to impose upon us. Reject those limits. Push boundaries. Redefine what's possible. Because that's what test pilots have always done, and what you will continue to do under my command. As the briefing concluded and the pilots dispersed to their assignments, Colonel Hammond, now approaching retirement, approached Maya with quiet acknowledgement. "They're lucky to have you," he said simply. "As was I, though I didn't recognize it at the time." Maya nodded her acceptance of this final validation. "The best lessons often come from our greatest challenges, sir." "Indeed they do, Colonel." Hammond agreed. "Indeed they do." The greatest obstacles, Maya had learned, often become the foundation for the most significant achievements, not despite the difficulties they present, but because of the strength developed in overcoming them. What matters isn't the laughter that greets your first failure, but the silent respect that eventually follows your perseverance. And in that truth lies the most powerful lesson of all. Never let someone else's limited vision determine your ultimate horizon. If you believe in pushing beyond limitations to achieve what others think impossible, subscribe to this channel. Because the greatest potential is often discovered precisely where others say it cannot exist. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.